Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called When the Machine Menace Found Humanity, written by Farmwhich4275. We stood ready to fight back, all as one, for the first time in history since they arrived. A fleet of 5,000 warships stood ready at the hyperlane to the nearest star system controlled by them. The great enemy, the monsters who had been plaguing us for over a decade now. Finally, everyone recognized the threat they posed, and we were finally ready to enact swift vengeance on them, with many more fleets being built behind our lines. This was our stand, and likely our only time in history. We were going to work as one to beat the machine. It all came down to this. Colonies wiped out, families and loved ones subjugated to miserable torture and experimentation. Entire planets turned into irradiator craters. Entire warships, fleets reduced to slag, and whole colonies turned to killing grounds beyond horror. It all came down to us. A war fleet of 70,000 ships, all ready for the last fight we'll ever have. The objective, strike deep into the machine heart, silence the core, and end this once and for all. If we failed, perished the thought, the machines would face the galaxy uncontested. Final checks, all ships charge hyperdrives, the radio barked at us. I nodded to my pilot and felt my ship's reactor shudder to full power. This is it. It finally ends, I said. A few tense moments passed. Ready! Engage! The radio commanded. My pilot responded faster than I did. In an instant, we were among the stellar dust of the incomprehensible insanity that was hyperspace. Thousands of ships flanking us at every angle. Frigates, corvettes, large fighters, dreadnoughts, and every ship in between. On one hand, this would be the most glorious battle of my career. On the other, it would be the last we fought if it went wrong. We were all counting on the sound tactics and good strategy. Every brilliant military mind in the galaxy had been gathered for this, and we were ready for anything. Reality slipped back into view, and the first 10 machine worlds warped into view. We gave them no time to react. "Open fire!" I yelled to my ship's gunners, and seconds later, the nearest machine ship was engulfed in a blast of laser fire. Before I could give an order, the rest of the fleet engaged with a fury I'd never before witnessed. The machine ships were being vaporized and slagged faster than we could have ever hoped or wished for, and before long, a massive explosion erupted from the middle of the machine's fleet as the dreadnought they had stationed here went over. It took out even more of the machine's fleet, and we were simply kept firing. Engines to full, hitting everything that we could as we charged through the system. We had no time to count our ships as we barged through their defenses, which seemed to melt under the sheer onslaught. We made it to the exit hyperlane, to the next target, and found the next system undefended, save for a few small outposts. We ignored it, pressing our advantage, and kept going. Engines full, just keep going. We had one chance to end this, once and for all. Ships from the fleet formed up and followed us, pressing the advantage, including a few dreadnoughts. The next system wasn't so easy, but we specifically had orders. My part of the fleet was to punch as deep as we could and as fast as we could, separate their defenses and kill what we could to plow through the way forward for the rest of the fleet and report back what we found. One of the computer worlds, that entire planet, converted to machine processing was beneath us, and it wasn't something we could ignore. "Break off and deploy atomics," I commanded, readying the deployment of one of the 5 atomic missiles my ship had. My ship, along with my part of the fleet, changed direction and burned for the planet's surface. When my ensign said all ships were aligned and in range, I gave the order to fire. A streak of missile smoke of every color in the spectrum streaked past us. I had no time to respond or watch. The sheer number would be enough to glass the planet and do enough damage. And even if only half of those missiles failed to hit, it would be more than enough. I barked my orders to turn and head for the next system, and my ships picked off a few smaller targets on the way through. My fleet's gunners all deserved commendations, as we were moving at absurd speeds, and they were still hitting every target they aimed at. It filled me with a greater pride than fear. The next system was undefended, save a few atomic platforms that I ignored as they were floating out of our range. I accepted a few losses and pressed on, knowing the battleships would be able to finish them off when passing through. My fleet moved through the next system, and we were in for it now. "Evasive action, flank speed to starboard," I commanded. The fleet followed my orders, and we passed through the formation of enemy warships that were presumably heading to reinforce the previous system. I yelled orders and commands as best I could through the chaos as the fleet opened fire and slipped through the openings between the machine ships. A few ships not able to evade in time and ending up slamming into the machine's fleet. Unfortunate losses, but we all knew what we were getting into, and thankfully they took the machine ships with them. The strategy was to slip through, then turn and fire on their rears and engines, do as much damage as we could get away with, then burn for the next system, hoping that we did enough damage for the dreadnoughts behind us to finish them off with little effort. The fleet moved into firing range and started shooting. It was there I noticed something odd. The machine ship's engines were cold, flameless, and were not moving, almost as if they were not reacting to our presence, almost as if they weren't there. I didn't care, and ordered focused fire just as the flight of battleships entered the system and started to obliterate the defending fleet. I barked orders, our reinforcements were here, and pressed the advantage. And within minutes, the machine ships had been wiped out. "That was too easy. Something's going on," Heidi said. "Meaningless. If they won't fight back, then who cares? They've done worse to us 1,000 times over. Fleet, form up. Ready drives to next system," I barked over the comms. My fleet and 2 other fleets flew with us to the next system, and as we started jump procedures, the rest of the fleet arrived, in a far greater number than we could have expected. I was fully expecting half of the fleet to have been wiped out by now. Something my gut was telling me something was off about the scenario, but I couldn't think about it now. I had a job to do. I had my orders. If this next system was occupied, blast through any fleet we find and head straight for the next hyperlane. Let the enemy chase us, give the time for the larger ships to come behind us, and hit the enemy ships from behind. We jumped into the system, and my instincts kicked in. My brain recognized machine ships, engines cold, shields offline, floating in empty space. No reaction to our presence of any kind. I shook my head, snapping myself out of it, and pressed the advantage, taking out several dozen ships on our way. We flew past the local garrison and to the edge of the star system. I could hear radio chatter by now, ships starting to question why this was so easy, then being yelled at to not look good fortune in the face. I quickly took the chance to check our fleet composition. We had less than 2% of our fleet, and was most due to accidents, traffic, or simply stupidity. Something was definitely wrong, but it wasn't in our favor. So I ordered the fleet to the next system and encountered no hostiles yet again. The space almost undefended. We ignored the strange feelings in our minds and kept going. The last system one final jump away. The feeling quickly vanished as we entered the last system and my fleet narrowly avoided colliding with an enemy dreadnought. This was it. This was the fight. We managed to move out of the beast's way and I ordered the fleet to scatter. I looked in front of us, between us and the core. It was a fleet of 200 dreadnoughts, and among them 10 machine titans, all armed with enough firepower to wipe our fleet out. The crew looked to me for leadership. I stood from my chair, drew my saber, and gave the order to charge the titans with our atomics, then faced what fate demanded of us. "For Ilaria!" I yelled, receiving a glorious chorus in response, and as the fleet quickly turned to engage. The missile streaked through the empty void towards our targets. If even one made it through, I would consider it a victory. It would do nothing compared to the ships it impacted, but it was something. And at this point, something was all we needed. 10 seconds. 15. 20. The enemy ships stood there. 30 seconds. The missiles were in range of point defense. Nothing. 40 seconds. Impact. The light of 1,000 suns blinded the fleet as we watched as every single missile we fired hit its intended target. Half the enemy was vaporized by the sheer force of the mass detonation of several thousand nuclear weapons, and the other half was surely disabled by the EMP impulse. I ordered the cavalry charge, and we attacked the enemy fleet with everything we had. I ordered half my ships to slip past and fire every atomic they had at the core world, which was right past them. They never fired back. No shields. No orders. Nothing. They sat there and took it, as if there wasn't anything there to command the ships. They were just dead in the void. But we didn't know if these things would activate later, so we just kept firing, and as more of the fleet arrived, more of the enemy warships were turned into wreckage. We finished the job and quickly headed to the last stand, the core world. The jump completed, and I instantly heard the sound of celebration coming from the radio. A tear fell from my eye. I dropped the saber and fell to my knees in happiness as I saw the core world, the origin point of the last decade of miserable death, was shattered in half, pieces of the machine world floating in the void. Every superstructure, from Dyson spheres to ring worlds, were all destroyed, shattered, or seemingly offline somehow. I sniffed and sobbed, managing to squeal, "Victory!" before collapsing back into my captain's chair, and finally releasing the last decade's worth of emotion. We all celebrated the end of it all. It didn't matter how this happened or how we got you. It was over, and it was all we cared about. The sounds of celebration saturated our radios as more of the fleet filtered in to the star system, and likewise began to celebrate the end of the darkest period in galactic history. Billions of lives finally avenged, and 2 whole civilizations finally put to rest with vengeance. I stepped around my ship as more of the fleet wandered in, the dreadnoughts choosing not to waste their effort and destroying what ships looked like they could even remotely pose a threat. The crowds and ships yelled with joy at the impressive explosive display. I helped myself to my sergeant's bottle of waterroot that had sung and celebrated in my own way, but before I could become intoxicated, I saw it. A small ship, not of the machine's design or make quality, slipping through the machine's wreckage, heading to one of the system's far hyperlanes. But my God, what a ship it was! It looked less like an active warship and more like a floating cathedral or church of some kind, armed to the absolute as one would expect, but it was too pretty to be a warship, or at least to my eyes. I quickly moved to one of the consoles and performed a short scan of it. It seemed to notice and stopped, turned to face the fleet. I scanned it again, using a more sophisticated method. This seemed to spook it, or something, as it quickly retreated out of the system. "All hands to stations! Ahead flank to hyperlane position number 7, vector 6, I barked. My crew all snapped to attention, and some already intoxicated, but not enough not to do their jobs. I sat back in my chair and groaned as the ship's engine spooled up and roared to life. Several ships nearby spotted our sudden maneuver and followed us. 2 battleships, a missile ship, and one of the dreadnoughts roared behind us. This was effectively uncharted territory, and we were doing it slightly drunk. I got to where the unknown ship was sitting and noticed one of the machine ships had part of its structure partially removed by salvagers. They were salvaging the ship, but how could they, I said, wondering aloud. An entire section of the machine cruiser was carefully cut out. I knew something was wrong. The battle was far too easy. Are they responsible for this somehow? My lord, engage hyperdrive. Follow the new lane. Shields to double front. I want no chances, I commanded. Aye, sir. My orders were followed, and once again we found ourselves in a strange world of hyperspace as the universe slipped past us. We appeared in system, and I spotted the ship once again, almost immediately picking it out from the chunks of starships floating about. It was actively towing pieces of wreckage and machinery, and entire machine ships were being systematically disassembled. I ordered full scans just as the ships behind us showed up, and started trying to figure out what was going on. And soon enough, I got the scans I needed, and the new ship was put on display in front of me. What a beautiful work of art it was. Sharp spires, handcrafted artworks, and carvings in the metal hull. A grey base coat of paint with a trim of gold, silver, and purple. The ship resembled a holy temple more than a warship, but the number of heavy cannons that saturated its surface belied that ideal. By now, the rest of the ship that followed us had noticed the odd ship and were likewise taking riskier scans. More detailed scans. And of course, we were almost immediately spotted as it rapidly returned to face us. A bright light appeared above one of the spires. My lord, multiple hyperdrive signatures detected, my nav officer yelled. Before I could give any orders, 20 more of these ships, still very small compared to ours, suddenly appeared in formation with it. Each one elaborately decorated, beautifully crafted, and armed to the teeth with primitive but still devastating weaponry. They are hitting us. Should I risk putting them through? My ensign asked. We have just fought a war, and I have no intention of starting another one, even if I know we can just win by breathing on them. Accept the hail, and give the translation system time to operate. Inform the rest of the fleet that we have first contact, I commanded. Aye, sir. We waited for a few moments before the hail went through, and sure enough, a creature I had never seen before appeared on my monitor, face to face. 2 front-facing eyes, suggesting predatory species, omnivorous considering the teeth, small tuft of hair atop the head, various odd features. Very odd things, these creatures. This one seemed to be a male, mammalian, apparently, a rare sight in the galaxy at large. Well, that's something. Hey, hello, I guess. You can understand me? I asked. Yeah, I can. What are you doing here? Nothing bad, I hope, he replied, shuffling nervously. What the hell are you doing so close to the machine core world? I said. It hadn't crossed my mind that they might have just been scavengers taking advantage of the battle. But what scavengers deploy ships like that? Salvaging derelicts for resources and tech. Isn't that what you're doing too? We can share, man. Plenty to go around, you know, he said dismissively with a shrug of his shoulders. We are here to get rid of the machine threat that has been plaguing us for almost a decade now. Surely you must have lost a few colonies by now. Surely you know how bad the machines are, I barked angrily, annoyed at his seeming ignorance. Whoa, calm down, man. Look, we don't know anything about some grand undertaking or whatever where you're at. We just started picking apart what wreckage with the robo-fleet started short-circuiting or something. We actually don't know what happened. One day they showed up and did some whole we're gonna execute your stick. Then they spoke with some dude and then they just started switching off. I actually don't know what happened, he said. This fried my brain. I blinked, my tired mind trying to process what was going on. I'm sorry. What did you say? Hold on, let me see if I can. Does anybody know where the reel for the FC is? Oh, thank you. Hold on a second here. It's a newsreel footage from the actual event. I can transmit it through the comm. Give me a second, he said. The monitor changed to a scene we all knew too well. The machine always contacted its victims, placed judgment on them, and then declared its intent to wipe out all life. The human responding asked why. It simply repeated its statement to exterminate. The human then asked politely if it wouldn't do that. The machine then seemed to stop and think in response to that request. The human politely asked it again if it would be so kind to not do that. It seemed to short-circuit, and its vocal system malfunctioned. The human then showed concern, and again politely asked if it was okay, or needed help, as it appeared to be in distress. The machine then fully went berserk, and seemed to suffer a catastrophic system failure, babbling incoherent nonsense before shutting itself down. What the hell? I said. I had no words for this. I had no brain power to process this. Did I just hear and see all of this that I just saw it? Your guess is as good as mine, mate. We have no idea what happened. The robo thing then spoke to that guy who said polite things, and I guess just switched off. I have no idea. We've been trying to salvage the data calls and stuff to see if we can find answers, but most of the data calls have been fried. It's almost like the machines performed a self-lobotomy of some kind, like we gave them a hidden command or something. Well, I don't know. We are just here in the dark as you are, man, he replied with a shrug. Okay. How long ago was this? I asked, dreading the answer. Date on the newsreel that says 2 months ago. Motherfuck! I yelled a series of rather vile expletives in my native tongue. I think I can be thankful the translators didn't get those ones. Sir, are you okay? You seem a bit stressed, he asked. I am stressed, I bellowed angrily. I stopped, regained my composure, and took a deep breath. Okay, let me get this correct. 2 months ago, the machines came to exterminate your species like they do all others. You politely asked them not to, and this confused them somehow, and you accidentally gave them the universal shutdown command, I asked. He looked around, presumably at his subordinates, and shrugged. I guess so. I don't know, man. We have a thing with some of our mechanoids and drones and stuff. Voice shutdown commands. Maybe the creators of the machine guys put in the same command and forgot about it until it was too late. The frustration and absurdity finally got me, and I started slamming my head into the chair. Oh, come on! Are you okay? Seriously. Do I need to see if I can send a medical retrieval team or something? You really need to not hurt yourself like that. It's not healthy, he said. Okay. Now, if I can figure the situation correctly, you just politely asked the machines to not kill you, correct? I asked. As far as I can tell, I wasn't there, man, but yeah. And through this politeness, so somehow managed to access a hidden command or series of passphrases that somehow managed to disable an empire of machines that has been slaughtering half the galaxy for a decade, I said. He finally gained some form of serious expression from the context I just mentioned. Finally, had his attention. I don't, when you put it like that. So what you're telling me, human, it is your species, through sheer dumb luck and manners, has just saved the galaxy from extinction. Just because you said please and thank you, I barked, my green skin visibly turning a paler shade from pure rage. He nervously shuffled and chuckled even more nervously. Well, I don't know the full story here, but we have found a few data cores that are partially intact and haven't sorted through them yet. Do you want them? I mean, you've been dealing with these machines longer than we have, so maybe you can figure it out, he said. I took a deep, frustrated breath. That would be lovely, thank you. I will send a shuttle retrieval team to collect the cores. Please have them waiting, I said, unable to even think from pure anger. He nervously shuffled again and started ordering the people around him about. We aren't like in trouble or anything, are we? Are you like going to declare war on us or something? That depends on just how stupid this all turns out to be, but in the grand scheme of things, I think not. Maybe we will leave you alone and seethe for a while before coming back to start diplomatic talks. I am too irritated right now to think, and also mildly drunk. Please excuse me, I said, and cut the broadcast. I sat there with my head in my hands and wondered what kind of stupid trick the gods were playing on us. The humans handed over the data cores, and sure enough, there was salvageable data. We returned it to the homeworlds for analysis, and we found it. The human who first spoke to the machine did so in a language strangely similar to the machine's programming code. And by sheer coincidence, dumb luck, and poor programming, or all of the above, the machine's shutdown code closely resembled the language's words for please and thank you. Oh, some variant of it. The machines had changed their code base so many times through natural adaptation that the shutdown didn't cause the full switch-off, and actually corrupted the code beyond recovery and wiped out its own systems. A form of accidental self-lobotomy, if you will. It changed the code base to such an extent that its own shutdown code became confused, muddled, and mixed in with other systems' commands and core circuitry. Its thousands of years of learning and AI self-reprogramming, inherited from its apparently incompetent creators, tried desperately to undo the command it was accidentally given. Because its programming was so muddled, it instead overloaded its processes and began to purge its own system data in an attempt to recovery, and it effectively deleted its core code based in the process. All because of politeness, and a strange, almost embarrassing coincidence. When I sobered up and calmed down from the blistering rage, we all came to the conclusion that war was over, and the machines were gone, one way or another. Do we really care? The universal answer was no, and so, with humanity now known to the galaxy, an existential threat completely wiped out because of them, and a debt we couldn't hope to repay now over our heads, we started talks with the humans, and as expected, they were very polite about it. End of story. I'd greatly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Caspar Arnholt, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.